another duality between characters that I don't really have that much evidence to give for it, but it's just this thing that Timber sometimes is shown, I think, as flying in a plane more often than Diddy is. This may be completely wrong because there are many images of Diddy flying in a plane, but I don't know. I wonder. There are these few images where there seems to be this duality between Diddy is on the earth, Timber is in the sky, kind of thing. And it feels to me as if Timber is presented here as a more adult version of Diddy, in the sense that Timber is more independent from the superegoic authority. After all, again, Diddy lives on Donkey Kong Island with all these parents surrounding him. Timber is home alone, free in his own island. Timber somehow represents the ideal that Diddy is striving for, of being more grown up. And it's weird because then he kind of resonates with one of the mysterious characters of this game, which is Drumstick. Timber does. It's as if Drumstick, as being an airborne creature, is higher above from the rest in some way. He is more adult. I feel that the way his poses in the promotional art kind of suggest like adolescence or something, as opposed to childhood, right? He's like more independent, more adult in some way, or is meant to represent that. But then the funny thing is that there is something about this that I think requires more thought. And I'm not sure if I'm going to give it more thought, honestly, but I feel that Drumstick is like he offers himself first, right? He tries to beat Wizpig alone. Maybe that's the thing. He tries to be an adult in the sense of in an entirely kind of dominance kind of aspect. He tries to beat Wizpig, but he can't, because he's trying to beat Wizpig on Wizpig's own terms, which are those of dominance. The rest of the characters beat Wizpig in terms of collaboration and as a team somehow. This, of course, is all happening symbolically, because in practical terms, of course, they are competing. It's a game about competition. It's a game about dominance, about who wins. But the fact that they're all doing it together in opposition to Drumstick, representing this sort of lone warrior who gets defeated. It's almost as if Drumstick is like a warning or something, that he represents this kind of a way of standing up to the superego that simply emulates the superego and therefore gets kind of transformed by it, absorbed into it. If there is some connection between Diddy as being more earth-based and Timber being more airborne, like Drumstick, and therefore more ethereal or higher up, or simply just more ethereal in some way, more in the nature of a distant future prospect of a future funland that's higher up, as this game's sort of upward ascent might suggest, then I wonder if there's some way in which Diddy, as more Earth-based, is connected to Pipsy, also as more Earth-based, as being, you know, someone who inhabits the mountain, so rock, as opposed to Tip Top, who, like Timber, is lower down or something, right? Higher up and lower down. And then Diddy and Pipsy have been kicked. Pipsy has been kicked down from the mountain, maybe, right? So that there is this weird point of union between them that, again, remembering that the game is, I think, a vision of Diddy's. It's a dream of Diddy. Then it could be this union between Diddy and Pipsy is not, you know, the union of stereotypical sort of heterosexual, you know, heteronormative kind of union of the male and the female, because it is happening within the psyche of Diddy as someone who, within the superegoic framework, exists as a man, right? In terms of how the superego is expecting him to act, and how Diddy sort of is expressing himself within that superego. So it's a mix of those two things. But so then the union, if there is a union between Diddy and Pipsy as earthbound creatures, it could be that this game seems to deal with the suffering of Pipsy and Taj, with the suffering of those who are seen as other from Diddy's central egoic perspective within his dream. So that it's as if the role of savior here is Diddy's, right? As in Mario games and so on, it's the male savior of the woman character. But I think that perhaps what's happening here is that because this is a dream of Diddy's, or, you know, if we interpret this as a dream of Diddy's, then, and when I say a dream, I don't mean literally that the game is a dream, but that if we interpret it under the light that the whole symbolic structure of the game revolves around Diddy as ego to the game somehow, then it's not what Diddy is liberating isn't really Pipsy as character, it's Pipsy as stereotype, as archetype. Diddy is becoming aware of his libidinal structures within the superego, and this becoming aware of it liberates him from those structures and liberates those who are being bound by his own libidinal structures, by his own egoic-like dominance over, or his own egoic nature over the superegoic structure. And that therefore it's as if the union between Diddy and Pipsy is what allows for the message to be heard, right? It's Diddy liberating the stereotype of the masculine and the feminine within his own psyche. And that expresses itself within the symbolic structure as the liberation or the task of helping or saving the female character, because it is stated in the plot that the fact that Pipsy has been kicked out is like a further incentive for the characters to embark on this quest. So it is kind of implied that this is a story of men helping a woman. It's another way in which stereotype, in this case, this not just the stereotypical portrayal of characters, but the stereotypical relations between them, when interpreted symbolically, that is to say, when interpreted as being intrinsically connected or reflections of the central ego, allow the central ego to disentangle itself from the forces that were putting those stereotypes into play in the first place, because the stereotypes were being put into play because of the repression into the unconscious of the unawareness of one's connection to those forces. And so it's interesting, because I think what I would like to sort of, what seems to come out of this for me is that it's as if these kind of stereotypical relations between beings and stereotypical representations of beings that are due to the superegoic imposition, these representations can perpetuate themselves through example. So, someone can play this game or watch any kind of movie or game or book, and if they see that the kind of person that they are being represented as in that piece of media is constantly, perpetually wearing the same kind of clothes and acting in the same kind of ways and having the same kind of relations with other types of characters, then you as individual can, you can acquire those superegoic binds, right? So it's as if, this portrayal of stereotype can be a poison in this way. But what's weird to me, and what seems to come across in whenever I try to do interpretation of this kind on games, on movies, is that when interpreted symbolically, something seems to happen where when you take these representations, when you try to connect the ways in which they enter into pattern and therefore into archetypal relation with the symbols around them, the very boundaries that were creating those superegoic binds dissolve in an increase of awareness regarding the forces that were creating those binds to begin with. There is something where, therefore, it's almost as if the appearance, that all of the stereotyped elements in media that can keep you bound, when interpreted, when used to bring forth a symbolic awareness, therefore an awareness that is more in communication with the repressed aspects of the psyche, when some sort of a symbolic interpretation, a symbolic dialogue is had with those stereotypes, they show themselves as beacons of light to acquire a further understanding of the unconscious, repressed forces that were like the invisible underside to those stereotypes. And when that invisible underside is brought to awareness in some way, and one's connection to it is brought to awareness, the entire kind of behavior can change, right? That's kind of the mystery of psychoanalysis or alchemy, or magic in that sense, that it's as if it's through putting yourself into a strangely solipsistic perspective where all of the elements that you're looking at are symbolic representations of a greater unified structure, which has you as the egoic center, that but by doing that, you somehow kind of, this kind of analysis that sort of it dissolves basically the boundaries between the external and the internal. That is to say, the external becomes representative of the different kind of forces that are operating internally, and also the internal, by so doing, by seeing the archetypal forces and their strength, their reality, that is to say, the like Diddy does, that Diddy sees by having more parents around him, he sees the archetype of the parent, and therefore sees the reality of something that we would traditionally consider immaterial. The solid reality of archetypal forces. So, see, both things are happening at the same time. Everything that we consider to be wishy-washy and immaterial appears suddenly solid and real when one sees the symbolic kind of dialogue between external objects, right? By seeing this symbolic dialogue, you abstract this sort of archetypal force out of it. In the same way that Diddy sees the kind of like the systemic shared nature of authority by having more authority figures around him, right? So that happens where suddenly the inner forces become more material, more sort of objectively felt, more solid, and the external instances, or sort of just any external reality appears to be, again, as in the case of Diddy with the two parents, suddenly the individual parents lose some of their charge, some of their libidinal charge, because you see that, oh, my parents are not the parents. They are one of the parents in this world. They become more symbolic. They become more ethereal in some way, inner. So I think that that's sort of what is being talked about here as well, that there is a way in which the process of interpretation, that is to say, the process of engaging with the material in order to sort of bring something to awareness or something, is a process through which there is a meeting of worlds, right? A meeting between the shore and the sand, where the sand becomes wetter by contact with the water, and the water becomes drier by contact with the sand. And that it is this way in which the stereotype can, I think, relinquish its hold on people through, the superegoic hold is dissolved, is relinquished by bringing it into the process of analysis, of interpretation. And you can use different words, because interpretation and analysis are very technical words, but I think that they're probably just different ways of talking about this whole process. I don't know, it's sort of a collaboration, conversation. Something like that. Anyway, so yeah, I think those are some of the things that I see happening in this game, and that's sort of where I'm gonna leave it. Yeah, thanks.